The world's roads have never been busier. All around the globe, more cars can lead to more crashes. An increase in onboard cameras reveals extraordinary escapes and incredible accidents. From Cape Town to Cambodia, Bali to Bulgaria. There are thousands of unbelievable sights and compelling close calls. Whether it's on 4 wheels, 2 wheels, or even on foot. They're all being caught on camera by the people who witnessed everything. The bad, the shocking, and the downright implausible. It's life on the world's roads as we've never seen it before. Between 20 and 50 million people are injured in car crashes around the world every year. This driver was okay, but it's not always just cars crashing into other cars. Sometimes they hit things that are more stationary, like a fire hydrant. The driver of this car was very wet, but just like everyone else you're about to see tonight, not badly injured. And sometimes, the things cars hit are a little bigger than a hydrant. Like a Chinese government building, for example. According to reports, the driver had been ordered to attend divorce proceedings at the building. Divorce rates in China are increasing rapidly. Nearly 4 million married couples a year split. 2.8 divorces for every 1,000 marriages, compared to 0.9 15 years ago. Not many of them react like this, though. Mistaking the accelerator pedal for the brake is one of the most common causes of crashing into buildings. And often it happens when drivers are trying to park, like this guy outside a restaurant. Trying being the key word. Unfortunately, the restaurant wasn't a drive-through. You'd think after that they'd ease up on the pedal, right? Nope, not this driver. Usually, it's shop fronts that suffer the most due to their proximity to parking spaces. When this phone shop was hit, one customer grabbed the nearest device and did exactly what you'd expect. Took a photo. But sometimes, the nearest parking space might be nowhere near. The shop is still right in the path of danger. You don't expect to see cars on the pavement getting into scrapes like this. And the driver probably wasn't expecting it either. With the front end stuck in a wall, she was stuck in the car. But where there's a will, there's a way. Eventually, the driver made her escape through the boot. There was no easy way out for this driver, though. After crashing into a hotel reception, you can forget the minibar. This is going to cost you. A rogue car probably cost this basketball player his three-point shot as well. If you thought courtside seats were close, this is a whole other level. South of China and north of Australia, Southeast Asia is made up of 11 unique countries. From the picturesque beaches of Thailand to the exotic jungles of Indonesia and the ancient temples of Cambodia, many would consider it the ultimate paradise. when it comes to the roads, it's anything but. Southeast Asia accounts for 25% of the world's road traffic deaths.
Wait. Patience, my friend.
In some Southeast Asian countries, 80% of accidents involve vulnerable road users, like motorcyclists. Thailand is the worst for bikers, as this guy in Bangkok found out. Singapore, by comparison, is much safer. There are 2.5 road deaths per 100,000 people there, compared to 17 in the region as a whole. But having a car will cost you in other ways. £27,000 to be precise, which is how much it is for permission to own a basic vehicle. So you'd think drivers would be extra careful, right? Wrong. And sometimes crashes in Singapore seem unavoidable. It's not clear if this was a last-minute lane change or a brake failure. Either way, the driver of the car was lucky not to be seriously hurt. Southeast Asia sees around 105 million tourists visit the region every year. But foreign tourists and foreign roads don't mix. Handy tip: wearing shorts when there's a strong chance you'll be falling over on tarmac is not a great idea. Despite the hot weather attracting visitors, Southeast Asia can get wet, very wet. This is a swollen river in Indonesia, which can get up to 2,000 millimeters of rain a year. Getting stuck in a flood means the locals are pretty adept at performing a rescue or two. It's not just the roads and rivers that can be dangerous for unsuspecting tourists. This is a Cambodian train. It's called a nori. It's made of bamboo and it can reach speeds of 30 miles per hour. And no, it doesn't have a buffet car. Or a signals operator, apparently. Which could explain how two trains found themselves on the same single track. Snow might look pretty, but when it's mixed with roads and cars, it can be extremely dangerous. In the US alone, more than 115,000 people are injured every year because of snowy conditions. In the snow, it takes a car 10 times longer to stop than in dry conditions. So it's best to keep your speed down, because stopping is difficult. This driver in Finland realized exactly how difficult when they came face to face with this wood transporter. The lorry driver was convicted of causing the accident by blocking the road. One thing faster than a speeding car on snow is snow itself. It can move faster than water. Like here, when a wall of snow was forced off the train tracks. Everyone has to be alert on snowy roads. It makes maneuvering difficult and accidents harder to avoid. Fortunately, this was only a minor bump. It seems snow can make a lot of people do strange things. From animals, like these moose in the US that used the snow as an opportunity to... Actually, I'm not really sure what's going on here. A gross car wash, perhaps? And this seagull forgot to check his blind spot.
Yep, all the way.
To to thinking it's a good idea to drive across a frozen lake in Canada. One thing that's not a good idea is riding snowmobiles across a junction. Nor is snowboarding down the street. Save it for the slopes, not the road. It's worth remembering that snow can be hazardous. Even specialized vehicles aren't immune to its perils, as this rider found out the hard way. But crashes aren't always so minor. This is what it looks like when a car totally loses control on a snowy road. It's definitely scary stuff. Coming up, how not to cycle, some epic fails, and find out what happens to this car in China. So far, we've seen the perils of parking in China, the dangers of snow in the States, and found out why tourists and mopeds don't mix. It's estimated that around 16% of the world's population can drive. That's a lot of people driving a lot of vehicles, with a lot of opportunities for some truly epic fails, both on the road don't worry mate, no one saw, except for the camera filming it, and off-road. This brings a new meaning to dirty driving. Fails can happen unexpectedly. Or seem to come out of thin air. "93% of car accidents are down to human error. The error here was putting the car in reverse instead of park. No need to worry though, someone else will take care of it." The attendant wasn't seriously injured, although he may not be so quick to help next time. Failing to remember that all-important handbrake is a problem faced by people all over the world. This family in Connecticut were having their car towed when... Whoops. Wherever you are in the world, roads are governed by rules and road markings. In 1918, the UK was the first place to feature white lines, indicating lane boundaries, and it's thought that the first road junctions date back to Roman times. But as old as these rules may be, you'd be surprised how many people completely fail to remember them. The first stop sign appeared in the US in 1915 and featured black lettering on a white background. In the 1940s, the color changed to yellow and black before changing to the red sign seen across the world today. Whatever the color, the instruction is obvious, or at least it should be. Here's the stop sign, and here's a driver completely failing to follow the instruction. And any motorist should know what a red light means. In Orange County, USA, this driver fails to stop at a red light when traffic is crossing. Further south, in Escondido, a red light runner runs into a problem. And over in Tarrant County, a red light fail turns into a rather casual U-turn. Neither of which are advisable on a busy highway. On the world's roads, it's not always other drivers that you need to worry about. Every year in the US, it's estimated that almost 1 million motorists crash into stationary objects, the biggest culprit being the humble lamppost. And it's clearly not just an American problem. In the UK, 800,000 people a year run out of petrol whilst driving. But that doesn't mean you should rush to the petrol station like this lady in China did. Unfortunately, she pressed the throttle instead of the brake. Staff quickly responded and removed the driver from the car. Maybe next time she'll remember which pedal is go and which is stop. No matter where you're driving in the world, you'll often come across some bizarre sights. Like a motorbike going full speed down the motorway with no rider. But there is usually an explanation for these odd occurrences. Moments earlier, this happened. At least the bike had better balance. Other strange sights on the world's roads seem to have no explanation at all. Some will make you laugh, like a prolonged struggle with a car wash in New Zealand. Nearly got it. Let's try this again, shall we? Or this uniquely genius way of keeping the rain off in China. If only there was some way to make this car have a roof to shield the driver. Some unusual things you see on the road simply don't belong there. Like cyclists going the wrong way up a very busy road.
These idiots are on a bicycle on the highway. Can you see this?
Or how about a lane-hogging skater? Or even a lazy cyclist. Let's hope he chipped in for petrol money. He could have just hitched a ride in this. Whatever this is. Still, it beats using your feet. I bet the boot space on this is excellent. Some vehicles may look odd. Others have odd and quite dramatic things happen to them. Exploding while driving through a junction would be quite an unexpected shock. And then there are those things which just raise more questions. Like, where has the passenger seat gone? What on earth has happened here? Why? How? And which window is this dog gonna stick with?
He's such a nosy little dog. That is hilarious.
But question as you might, there are some things you've just got to accept and roll with. Or at least keep your distance, because you can see it coming a mile off. This lorry in India had been swaying from side to side for quite some time before the cameras started rolling. It's not clear what was going on, but it was clear this was the only way it was going to come to a stop. Traditionally, cars are supposed to stay on the ground. But for some, it's all about getting the biggest air, whether intentionally on a racetrack or unintentionally on the road. Here are our top 5 big airs. At number 5, a driver who really wants to avoid the toll. Clearly exceeding the speed limit, the driver has no time to slow down. At number 4, a BMX rider attempts a 540 spin down a set of stairs. Talk about losing massive air. Maybe he'll land it next time. In at number 3. This car in China looks like it's on springs. But if you look closely, this car is sent flying into the air from a rogue wheel which fell off a minibus moments before. At 2, a South African rally team misjudge a large ditch during an off-road race. The driver accelerates, causing his vehicle to soar through the air and somehow land on all 4 wheels. It's impressive moves. And in at number 1, a drunk driver fails to spot a large bridge as they head towards it at speed. Clearing the entire bridge, the driver fails to maintain control of the vehicle. Next stop, some bushes and jail. Coming up, capers in Cape Town, some rubble trouble in China, and find out what happens to the driver of this car in Russia. So far, we've seen flying cars, some unusual driving in India, and learned the importance of the handbrake. When you want to get past someone, you overtake. Simple. But it can also be dangerous. In India, overtaking causes the most accidents on the roads. Nearly 27,000 people a year are killed when it goes wrong. But it's not just India. All over the world, people are risking it all to get past that car in front, with nasty consequences. And sometimes it's vehicles you wouldn't expect. There are just over 500,000 registered caravans and camper vans in Australia. Normally, people complain about getting stuck behind them. Not this time.
Holy shit. That's a hit. Oh.
The trick to overtaking is to always make sure the coast is clear. Don't end up playing a dangerous game of chicken like this driver in Nevada. The driver of the silver car in this clip is doing it all wrong. Overtake on the wrong side, check. Drive on the pavement, check. Crash into telegraph post, check. At least the driver managed to stay in his car. Unlike here in Russia. As he veered out of control, the driver was thrown from the vehicle, only to get up and casually saunter over to what was left of his car. He even had time to pull his socks up. Now, this biker in the States actually executed the overtake perfectly. But then something went wrong at the corner. He had the wind knocked out of him, but was otherwise okay. Usually, if someone's trying to overtake you, it's best to let them. Whatever you do, don't do this.
Hostia puta, macho. Joder, tío. Hostia puta.
In Ireland, 2 delivery drivers had a face-off. Looks like all they're delivering is a dodgy overtake. Much like this one in Canada, a dash cam captures the moment a driver decided to use the hard shoulder as a personal overtaking lane. It's important to know when and where you can overtake. At this corner in Australia, you can't. That lane is meant for 1 car, not 2. And even if you're allowed to overtake, remember it may not be clear to do so. This orange van caused damage to at least 4 vehicles after the lane it was in was blocked off. He probably would have been better just going slow. Almost 9,000 miles from the UK, South Africa is famous for its stunning scenery and vibrant culture. It's also home to 750,000 kilometers of road and over 12 million cars, which means plenty of opportunity for things to go awry.
You can laugh there, I can give you that much.
The motorcyclist in this CCTV clip found this out firsthand. The African region has the deadliest roads in the world, while it's home to just 2% of the world's vehicles. A massive 16% of road deaths happen in Africa, and South Africa is one of the worst countries. This biker was okay, but many others aren't so lucky. In Johannesburg, an innocent tree took quite a smash. Eventually, the driver emerged unscathed, and the tree was still standing. With dodgy driving commonplace in South Africa, you can see why drivers always need to keep their wits about them. As do bikers. It's been estimated that as many as 2/3 of accidents involving bikes and another vehicle happen because the other vehicle violated the bike's right of way. This driver failed to indicate. Sometimes it's hard to tell who's at fault. And of course, South African bikers aren't immune to getting into accidents without anyone else being involved at all, which can often be more embarrassing than painful. But the road users most involved in accidents in South Africa are pedestrians. This was just a near miss, but they make up a huge proportion of victims on the road. Other elements are at play when it comes to South Africa's dangerous roads. It's a country of many climates, which can cause havoc with the weather. From tornadoes, to flooding, to sandstorms. All of this can make driving very unpredictable. Just ask this lorry driver who lost a fight with the wind. The other aspect of nature South Africa is famous for is its safaris. It's home to 4 million hectares of national parks, which is about 2.5 million football pitches. Here, tourists can drive through and get up close and personal with animals, sometimes too close. The African elephant population has decreased dramatically over the last century. There used to be between 3 and 5 million. Now that number is around 500,000.
Oh, you supposed to.
So no wonder they're angry.
Holy
But they're not as dangerous as hippos. Hippos kill nearly 3,000 people per year. and they can run at speeds of up to 20 miles per hour. Fortunately, this car could go a bit faster than that. But in South Africa, animals aren't just looked at and hastily driven away from. If you're bored of racing cars, check out ostrich racing. This is in South Africa's Karoo region, where they've been farming the bird since the 19th century. And they're speedy at around 40 miles per hour. Who needs Formula One when you've got this? When things go wrong on the road, hopefully there'll be someone to rescue you. In the US alone, 32 million drivers a year have to be rescued by breakdown services. But sometimes the rescues are a touch more dramatic than a tow truck. Who knows how this woman in China found herself in a river, but it took the fire brigade to get her out. And just in the nick of time too. Her car was soon completely submerged. If it's not the professionals coming to your aid, then maybe it's members of the public. After getting into a rather precarious position, this car and driver were rescued by a crowd of passers-by. Talk about lending a helping hand or 20. Sometimes people need rescuing from much bigger crashes though. As help arrived, the fate of the people in this car was unknown. But eventually, they were freed unhurt. Rescuers really do come from the places you'd least expect. This bus driver and his passengers stopped to save a man whose car overturned. Following the rescue, the trapped passenger was quick to check his phone. Yeah, no problem, mate, anytime. It's not just on the roads where drivers find themselves in some difficult situations. This driver managed to get stuck in wet sand at the beach. Determined to rescue his car, he hired himself a digger, which also got stuck. Eventually, his car was freed, but the problem with sand is it gets everywhere. June to August in China is rainy season. This can bring flash floods, which are no good for buses. Commuters are much better off in a boat. But fast-moving water can prove more dangerous and dramatic. There were no boats to rescue this car's occupants. Instead, they had to be pulled aboard the bus to escape the current. Their car wasn't so lucky. And neither was this bike. But even when there's no current, floodwater can be dangerous. There's no way of telling how deep it is, and chancing it can lead to situations like this. Then a rescue is required. It's generally best to avoid water when you're driving. This wasn't even a flood. The rickshaw driver tried to cross a river. His vehicle was overpowered and left him and his passengers in a dangerous situation. Fortunately, they were rescued before the rickshaw could be washed over the edge. So sticking to dry land is usually better, but it doesn't mean you're not going to need to be rescued. 4 adults and a child were stuck in this car. After some help, they made their escape via the broken windscreen. But it's not just humans who need rescuing from the roads from time to time.
That is the coolest thing I've ever seen. This
Canadian bear cub got into a spot of bother, but was saved by his mum. Coming up, a daring pursuit, pesky pedestrians, and discover why this lady has been pulled over. It's been one hell of a journey, from a roadside rescue
That is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
to swerving SUVs. And everything in between. When it comes to driving, there are many rules, some less well known than others. In Russia, it's against the law to have a dirty car. And in a part of China, there's a rule that children should salute all passing cars in order to avoid accidents. But the world over, one rule is key: don't drive where you shouldn't. Someone really needs to tell this driver in China that. If other vehicles are already parked there, then you should probably avoid driving there. Same goes for this guy. And with the amount of damage the crash did to his car, he won't be driving anywhere soon, let alone places he shouldn't be driving. But when not trying to plow through parked cars, some drivers drive where they shouldn't, trying to get round other moving vehicles. The first bike lane in Toronto was introduced in 1979, but this was no bike. Meanwhile, in China, this SUV driver probably took more than a few wrong turns to end up here. Fences usually indicate where not to drive, right? After retrieving their bumper, the guys in the car made a getaway, minus a headlight. Remembering where you're going helps to prevent driving where you're not supposed to. This fork in the road in China caused more than a couple of drivers to break the rules of the road, though. Oh dear. When you find yourself reversing on a motorway, you know you're in trouble. If you're unsure of where you're going, just follow the signs, but not too literally. I know the arrow goes right, but that doesn't mean right now. Let's be fair, some cars end up in the wrong place through no fault of the driver. They simply lose control. And sometimes take unexpected shortcuts, like this guy. And other times, this happens. That was a shortcut to nowhere. From wrong turns to wrong moves in Texas. Forget driving where you shouldn't. This guy is most definitely dancing where he shouldn't. It's estimated that the world is home to over 12 million police officers. From 91 in Liechtenstein to nearly 1 million in the US. When something goes wrong, they're the ones to call. And with more and more cameras in police cars, the world's police are capturing everything from the strange to the scary. Being a traffic cop is a dangerous job, which is why every state in the US has a move over law, requiring cars to keep a lane between them and stopped emergency vehicles. Not everyone remembers, though. More often than not, those sorts of accidents are caused by rubbernecking. If one car slows down to stare at one crash, another one isn't far away.
Yep, sorry. Rapid HC 85.
Aside from crashes and close calls,
Jake, why don't you come up here? There's been an accident right in front of me.
cameras are capturing moments of pure stupidity. Like this suspect, who falls flat on his face during a pursuit. or these drivers who run red lights. Right in front of police cars. Running a red light is usually seen as a misdemeanor, as is fleeing police on foot. Trying to do it in a car, though, is a felony, a much more serious crime. Of course, fleeing isn't always that simple. In the US state of Minnesota, there are around 25,000 drunk or impaired driving arrests in a year. This lorry driver was one of them. If swaying all over the road wasn't a giveaway, then falling out of the cab certainly was. And so were the 2 bottles of vodka in the lorry. The driver was arrested and convicted. But it's not all high-speed chases and hot pursuits. Sometimes policing can be a little less serious.
This is my day.
This police officer in the US was tasked with escorting these cows on their way.
Chasing cows down I-70.
This officer stopped to pick up a vagrant on the road.
Did you lose a teddy bear?
Yes, sir.
There you go.
Apologize.
No problem.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All in a day's work. And then there's this police officer who is in hot pursuit of a wife.
So, Sarah, you make me so happy, and I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you please marry me?
Would have been awkward if she said no. With over 1 billion cars and 7 billion people in the world, it's inevitable that at some point cars and pedestrians are going to cross paths. Especially if they don't finish crossing said path. And whether they're in the road or by the side of it, it's best to watch out for them. Something someone should have told this driver when they approached this crossing. The pedestrian had cat-like reflexes and jumped on the bonnet of the moving car. The middle of the road is just not the best place for some things. Like a photo shoot. Unless it was a speed camera. Pedestrians can find themselves in very near misses with traffic. It might have helped if this guy wasn't crossing on a junction. But you know what they say, fortune favors the person who has no idea what's happening because of a massive umbrella. It's quite common in China for cars to keep driving straight through pedestrian crossings, barely giving way to people. It looks like this car couldn't stop. And the man crossing had a lucky escape. A similar story here in Canada. Watch the left of the screen. While minding his own business, this guy nearly ended up on the back end of a truck. Not all pedestrians avoid a bump, though. In the USA, walking in the road or jaywalking is illegal. No surprises why. When another pedestrian had an encounter with a car, his reaction was a little different. And the driver responded in a similar fashion. But it's not just cars pedestrians need to watch out for on the world's roads. Not so much a hit and run, it's more of a hit and fly.